We're so excited tonight about this amazing group of panelists. I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you, and we'll get started. Also, if you could please, Chris, if you could, and everyone on our wonderful panel, tell us what first made you fall in love with filmmaking. So if you'd please introduce yourselves and let us know what made you fall in love with filmmaking.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Poindexter. I think I have a unique background in that I am a full-time attorney. I'm a general counsel of a media company, but I've always been in love with filmmaking and storytelling. So I have been making the slow, very long transition to full-time storytelling and filmmaking. I just love storytelling in general, whether it's the written word or oral storytelling, and I just always love the challenge of filmmaking, which is the most difficult one and the most collaborative. And I think I uniquely position myself to be able to take on that challenge. So, and I just love the visual medium. So that's my story.
I love it. Thank you. Elaine?
Hi, my name is Elaine Del Valle. Is this working?
Can you hear her okay? All
Okay.
right, great.
I am Elaine Del Valle. I am an actress, always first. Became a member of SAG in 1994, and in 2009, I felt so held back by the roles that were available to Latina actresses that look like me, that I decided to write a play, and unbeknownst to me, it was off-Broadway. It won many awards. It was called Brownsville Bred, and it chronicled my true coming-of-age story out of Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York, as a Latina. So that, in fact, really made me fall in love with storytelling. And because I felt the constraints of having an audience, buy a ticket, sit down, watch the 90-minute play, and all that, I started to then produce web series and film because I wanted people to be able to click and see my stories and what I had to do, how I performed as an actor, as well as the stories that I had to offer as a Latina female out of New York.
Wonderful, thank you. Michael?
Yeah, what a question. So I started off in the theater as an actor and as a director, and by my mid-20s, I was burnt out on the theater, which seems really early. But I fell in love with filmmaking for a number of reasons, because mainly because I liked that it grabs from all kinds of different disciplines, visual, audio, writing, organizing, all kinds of stuff. And I always say that I feel like directors, especially film directors, have to have the kind of personality where they like to make a big mess out of their lives just to get the chance to clean it all up. So I guess I kind of got addicted to that after I've made my first couple films, and kept doing so.
Fantastic. Timothy?
Hi, my name is Timothy Cooper, and I am a writer-director. I started out as a not very good actor in plays, like in elementary school through high school, and then I realized I was not God's gift to acting. And then I started, when I moved here after college, I started doing improv at Upright Citizens Brigade. And I think one of the things that made me get into filmmaking was, well, I saw my friends doing it, and they were doing a fantastic job. And I thought it would be cool to play and make more than like 5 people in a bar basement laugh at a time. And so now I make tens of people laugh at a time. So then I made a web series that was kind of one of my first forays into it. I was already writing scripts and doing script consulting on a smaller basis. And then I made a web series, Concierge the Series, starring Kate McKinnon. And that helped me get my managers and get more of my career off the ground. And now most recently I wrote and directed the short film Lemon, which is premiered at this past year's Tribeca Film Festival, and is now available on United Airlines and Amazon Prime. And so that has also really helped get a lot of attention. And I also, in my spare time, I teach screenwriting as well, because I just love consulting on people's scripts and helping them get it to the next stage and helping them learn what I wish I had known earlier on. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth? Wish I would have known what I ended up learning later on. I think that is one of the things that's so exciting to me about this series that Melissa put together, is that trying to help us as actors avoid the pitfalls, avoid the things, if there's any way that when we have this level of expertise here, having a panel, people bringing these ideas, everyone here has a background in acting. So everyone started where we are as actors, and now asking ourselves to put on how many hats in order to bring something forward that we can be proud of, that you could add to your reel, that you could use to help you get either new representation, more representation, getting your work out there so that people can really see you and get excited about you and have you involved in their products and their projects. So what I know that, and Melissa mentioned this earlier, this is such a big topic, pre-production. It's huge. But through your experience, what we're hoping is that it's just to take that next step, just to find out, what do I need to do? If you've been following this series, you've written something, even if you haven't, go back and watch them, and hello everybody at home. So go back and watch it and get excited about writing, producing, putting something forward. So now, with those things in mind that you've already taken care of, let's start at the beginning of production, pre-production. Where do we start? What's the first thing to do? The script is written, and sure, there might be changes along the way. That's okay too. But where to start? What's the first thing to start? Where do you like to start with
Actors.
pre-production? Okay.
100%. 100% actors. You have a script. You have to get the right talent, because the right talent will soar. It'll make your project soar. So for me, I also work as a professional casting director for the last 8 years. So for me, casting is key. Very often, because I know lots of talent, because I've seen them for other roles, I know exactly who's going to get the part and why they're going to get it, and the energy that the part requires. And really, once you have that cast together, if you put them all in a room and you do that script read through, you're going to be on fire to get this thing done. So for me, it's actors, and then cinematography, and then sound. So my cinematographer, my director of photography has to be excellent. And my sound equipment, do not scrimp. I know we were talking low budget. I recently did a mini documentary that I shot in 2 days on a phone that premiered at the New York Film Festival, and I spent nothing. So yes, you can spend nothing, but if you have a budget, do not scrimp on cinematography and sound, because those two things, and then the acting. Actors, we know as actors, will do it because we want to act. So it's not hard to get a great actor to do a great part if you've written it very well, and you're going to make the film that looks good. So they want to make sure that you have a great cinematographer and the sound is going to be good. So those are my 3 key: acting, cinematography, sound, and then all the paperwork.
Yeah, I 100% agree, especially about the sound, because I always tell my clients when they're going into pre-production that, sort of blurry or dark cinematography might be a choice. If we give people the benefit of the doubt, you're like, oh, maybe they meant to do that. Or they meant to could totally miss half the actor's face or whatever. But no one ever means to have bad sound. That means you screwed up. If I can't hear it clearly, you cut corners on the sound, and that's the one thing you do not want to cut corners on. It could be shot on an iPhone. It could be shot on a DSLR. it's it could be shot in darkness. I mean, please don't, but if you have to. But if I can't hear it, or it sounds like it was done with the iPhone's camera or the built-in camera or something like that, we will know, and just immediately any festival programmer will tune out. I mean, you're already done with it. And so that's definitely the number one thing. And also, if you think you're going to repair anything, you're like, oh, a helicopter was going overhead and there was a jackhammer and also a subway underneath us, and we're just going to repair it in post. That's not going to happen unless you have the budget for ADR. So, and if you had the budget for ADR, you should have put it into the sound, and we'll do another take. We'll do another take, because everything's going to cost 10 times more to fix in post with sound than if you had just spent it at the beginning in your production sound quality.
Absolutely.
I would agree with the sound issue. Totally. If you have to pay anybody on your set, pay your sound guy or girl, and just to get somebody who's really good. But I do agree with the actor thing, but I also think that prior to all of this is rewriting about 5,000 times, spreading your script around to everybody that you can, friends, family, whoever, people who have experience.
Enemies.
Well, those two, yeah. Do a reading, all that stuff, make sure it's right. And then for me, it's before I even start looking, unless I have somebody in mind actor-wise, for me, it's most important to sit down and learn how to break down your script, and start to learn how much it's going to really cost. I like to build a real budget, even if I have absolutely no financing from anywhere, to know what the real scope of this film should be in the real world, so that you can then start subtracting and subtracting and subtracting. And because part of the reason is not only for you to know what you're dealing with, but for whoever you're working with and whoever you're going to ask to come work for little or for free, to know what they're dealing with, in terms of days, in terms of locations, in terms of number of cast, number of crew. Because once you start to get those statistics right in your head, you sometimes have to go back to your script and look at it again in what can sometimes be even a more creative way. I often say that the realities of production forces filmmakers to be even more creative. When you just kind of have everything at your disposal, sometimes it becomes a shit show, and maybe it's not so good. So I would say learning how to break down your script and write a budget is super important.
So I would go, and I agree 100% with.
Your mic, Chris.
I agree 100% with what everyone's saying, and I think this goes along exactly what you're saying. But I think there's a theme emerging. For me, the biggest breakthrough or discovery of what I realized I need the most was it takes a village to create a film. And I am supremely aware of my limitation and flaws, which was key, and it helped me identify what I needed and the members of the team that I needed to pull off, just starting with my first short film I made in 2011, and knowing, going out and sort of seeking out the people that would sort of fill my personal deficiencies and help me build a team that could do those things you talk about, like create a budget. If I don't know anything about creating a budget, it'd be great to find a producer or someone who has those talents. You guys all have the leverage that you described, which is your talent, and which is, I agree, is the most important part. And that talent can be used to horse trade for other things you need. So, if like you said, if you're looking for the DP wants to know, well, who's your talent? And then the talent wants to know, well, who's your DP? And if you get your pieces, and it's like putting together a puzzle, and when you have all the right pieces to come together, you create something that could be amazing. And for me personally, is when I joined, I made my first short film mostly on my own, which got me into the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective. And being able to join a filmmaking community where I live, that we met often, and I could just say, hey, I'm looking for a sound person, and I can get 20 names, and not only just get 20 names, I could get commentary on those different people and say, well, this guy sucks, or this guy's lazy, or this guy's great, but he's hard to work with. Having that sort of feedback and that sort of referral system is just very important or very helpful to producing the product that you want.
I think also a way to get those things. I mean, for me, I watched other people's short films before I went into any production. And I was like, gee, that guy was pretty good. I remember him. Let me see if I can reach him and maybe he'll work with me. And that's exactly what has happened. And I built my team from there. Now I have 3 different cinematographers that I would use at any time, maybe 4 now. And at least 2 sound guys that I use consistently. So, and I would even switch to days to use those people to make sure that it's that good. And also, coming off with Michael. Coming off with what Michael said in terms of budgeting and having to think creatively about your script, because maybe one facet of what you've written is not that important if it means having to spend another $3,000 or another 2 hours to reset the lights. So I remember for one of my first productions, one of my characters, actually I played the character, was supposed to go into a pharmacy restroom and change into pantyhose in the pharmacy restroom because she didn't want to wait online before she paid. And because of the time restraints, I said, you know what? She'll just change her pantyhose in front of the store clerk that doesn't want to let her into there. And it's one of the best scenes that I've ever shot. I mean, it's physically demanding, funny, and I wouldn't have thought of it if I wasn't thinking about saving time and money.
I love it. Thank you. I always think about Jaws, too, that the shark didn't work, and so they had to get creative, and the music that came out of that is so fascinating because every time you hear that music, you get scared, you know. And if the shark would have worked, that wouldn't be that way. So I am wondering, so we have different places that we can start, so that's great. So we can get started. We have the script written to the best of our ability today. We're looking at talent. We're looking at making a budget. Things that you mentioned that are most important are going to be of course, your actors. We love actors, and we know a lot of good actors, including ourselves, right? So, you know, if you're casting yourself, if you're doing this a vehicle for yourself, you know, when I have heard sometimes people talk about what kind of product they want to see on a reel. Sometimes I've heard from casting directors that they want to see something that looks like it's produced, that it's not something that was just, you know, thrown together or like you were saying, Timothy, you know, you can't see someone's face, even though Clint Eastwood apparently does stuff like that. But that's his artistic expression.
That's a choice, yeah.
That's a choice, right. So as far as like actually making it look and sound good so that they can hear us, let's just talk specifics for a moment about the equipment that you would use for sound and for filming it for the camera. Can we just talk about what are possibilities when you're just starting out, ways to make it work for you?
Wow. Well, one thing I would say though and I know this might sound I know this is mostly actors, but I would caution against just making a film just for your reel. Okay. I mean, certainly use it for your reel. Get films from those people you've worked with for your reel. But it's a really hard process, no matter how long it is or how short it is. And if you're making a film, make it to make a good film. You know, not. I don't want to be all hokey and like it should be art or whatever. I'm just saying it because it's really hard to do. The people you're going to work with are going to want to work with you more if you're making something that's not just a vanity thing, quote unquote, or something just for your reel. Because if you're only thinking about this is for my reel, this is for my reel, you're not thinking about that there's a broad issue out there, which is that you are gathering people together to make something that you want them, you know, they don't have to be as 100% passionate about it as you are, but you want them at least to give a shit, you know? And necessarily giving a shit about your career is not necessarily the way to get people excited to work with you. So I would say that, first of all.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. The intention that you set out with.
With that, also because I know that we are speaking to lots of actors here with SAG-AFTRA, I'm going to say this, and bravely, because last year I directed, wrote, and produced a short film, and I didn't want to act in it because I didn't want it to be a vanity piece. I ended up acting in it. I won 2 Best Actor awards at 2 different festivals. So don't let it stop you. Again, it should be a fantastic story, but again, don't let it be a vanity piece, but don't be afraid to put yourself in, because we as actors, the only difference between us and them is they got the part. So if we're not going to hire us, who will? If you believe in your talent and yourself, and you self-tape enough, and you know your movements, you understand camera, don't be afraid to do it. Be brave and put yourself in it. And if it is just for your reel, it shouldn't be. My projects are not that now. But if it is for your reel, that's a great thing, because it's hard to find real material. And even when you do parts for other people, you seldom get them. So if you have an opportunity to create a great part for yourself and do it, and it looks great, and it's a great story, and you're proud of it all in all, do it. That's what I say as an actor.
I was just gonna, I think that's great. I 100% agree. That's amazing that you said that. But I just wanted to say, I wanted to warn, based on your question, because I think I've made the mistake in my past of saying I need a certain type of camera to make an excellent product, or I need a certain type of, well, not audio equipment, but a camera. I was like, I have to have a red one for my first short film. That's what I need, because they look great and they make cinematic stuff. But if you take a red one and you put it in the wrong hands, the wrong cinematographer, it could look like crap. Whereas if you have a great cinematographer or someone who's talented, they could take an iPhone and make something that looks beautiful. So I think you don't chase equipment. I think I think what I did is I looked and saw what I liked. And, it's amazing because we're in New York City. There are a lot of commercial directors who would love to work on the right project, DPs or whatever, and they're tired of making Nike commercials, even though they make a lot of money for them, but they would love to do something artistic and work with great talent or whatever. So, and they're here. They're for some, you befriend these people. You lean on them. You beg them. You offer them, we do this for me. The next project, when we're all going to get paid, it's going to be yours or whatever. And you make deals like that. But I wouldn't chase equipment necessarily.
I chase the people who chase the equipment.
Chase the people who chase the equipment.
Yeah, because I shoot as well, but I've never been like a tech head who really is constantly reading up on all the new, because there's constantly new great cameras, right? Right. But finding those people, like you were saying, you find the people that have that expertise that you can work with, that you can trust, that you respect, and vice versa.
And it's going to be an up and coming person, like an AC, an assistant camera op. They're going to hopefully have access to the equipment and want those opportunities to shoot something. But you better believe they're going to want to shoot a really good story at the same time. They're not just want to put, it's just one shot of you crying in a corner or something. They're not going to, they want something that's going to get into festivals as hopefully you do too. You want it to play to the broadest audience, or to play really strongly to a specific audience. So the story is so key. And that's why, just going to what Michael was saying, I always not only do readings, with my, I'm also in the Brooklyn Filmmakers Collective, actually. So I do readings with them, and I do other readings with actors. I rent a rehearsal space, at Ripley Greer or whatever, and I do rehearsal after rehearsal. But in addition to that, I budget for rehearsal days. So you're paying the actor to meet for a day, to meet for 2 days, or the actors, and you are going over the script, because I would much rather we get, anything not out of the way. We fix everything that I didn't realize about it before, or that they're not, comfortable with how the character would move or say this line, that we're fixing that before we're on the set. And of course, things change there too. But I am more than willing and happy to pay for rehearsal, because it just fixes so many problems, and it's much cheaper to fix things when you don't have the whole crew there, but rather it's the day or the week before, and you're just rehearsing stuff in a space.
Did you have something to say, Chris?
Oh, I was just going to add this, Chi. Go to NYU Film School screenings. You will see, because what happens is there are people who are devoted to all aspects of filmmaking, but there are people who just want to make beautiful looking films, or whatever. And you will see them, you go to the screenings and you'll see a lot that look like, average or whatever, but you will see some beautiful shot stuff. And there is a window where, because everybody can see it and they jump out and they look great. And I remember have you heard of the DP Bradford Young? Black guy, like there was a window I could have had him because he was just right there in film school, but his stuff looked amazing then. And you knew that he was going to be gone, taken up, swept up by Hollywood eventually. And he was ready, he was down, we delayed, to come back to him a year later, and he's already doing great, amazing things, and you can't get it. And I had that.
Not just NYU, the New York Film Academy. I've been watching a kid out of Miami that's in his first year of the New York Film Academy that I can't wait to have him be my cinematographer for something. And he's a kid. And I've been watching him, and now he's in New York. So,
Yeah, it gets very territorial when it comes to these things. It does.
His name is Andrew Garcia. I
get
believe
very
in this.
jealous when my editor works with somebody else, even though it's like, what? Of course, my editor. They're not nobody belongs to anybody. But it gets territorial for sure when you find somebody that you love and love to work with. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of answering, going back to your question, I mean, I would not trust. I worked, for months or years on a script. I would not trust myself with the skills that someone else does a million times better in terms of their sound equipment, their ability to figure out, okay, we need this lighting, we need this camera, these lenses. That's worth it to take the time to raise the funds, even just the funds for the rental if the DP is working for free because they're out of school or whatever. It's worth that time for me because I'm not going to trust myself the way I'm going to trust someone who's devoted their whole life to refining these skills, and they're going to be working on my script, so I'm going to honor that.
Well, and also as with many of these questions, it's really also comes on a case-by-case basis for what kind of film you're making. If you're making a super verite-looking film, you may be able to find a great, documentary shooter who will come out and shoot great, on the street acting stuff, like, Cassavetes or Sean Baker or somebody. Or on the flip side, if you're doing a super interior, stylized, need a lot of super specific lighting, you need a different kind of talent to work with. The one thing that, again, not to keep beating a dead horse, but the one thing that is sound that is sort of across the boards, just get a good sound person.
With great equipment. He has to have great equipment. That's what makes him good.
And what I'm also hearing, I'm hearing a few things about being able to, that old saying of measure twice, cut once, so that you're, when you're in pre-production, that you're thinking about the people that you've worked with that you like. I love that idea, Elaine, that you were talking about watching people's films, seeing what people are doing, going to festivals. And this idea of also looking through what have you done and who have you worked with who actually might be able to help you out, who might be willing to do something for you. And that people are often, like you were saying, Chris, hungry for something artistic, because even though they might be, maybe they're shooting commercials all the time and they're in a certain hierarchy how they are working in that specific genre, that when they come to you and work with you, that they are in charge of a department. So all of a sudden they have artistic license, and maybe there are things that they want to try that they haven't been able to in the past. So those are ways also of you being able to mine the resources that you already have, so that you're not shelling out, and not just paying for it, but paying for it in other ways where you might not know the reputation of somebody. If you like somebody already and you've worked with them, and maybe as an actor, that you, as an actor working on their project, how wonderful to be able to bring them into your project.
But the only caveat I would add to the commercial person thing is that they're, by and large, they are used to being paid well. By and large, they're used to working with the same crew, and they're used to being paid well. So I wouldn't, don't put too many of your eggs in the let's get really great commercial people basket, because, it's hard to ask someone to do what they do for a lot of money for next to nothing or nothing, depending on your budget. So go for it, but be aware that you may run into people that you really love that are just going to be like, you got to pay me my full rate or I'm not doing it.
100%. And with these commercial directors that earn so much, they make like $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a day. They are looking to come out of the box. So I think build what you're doing. I recently had a commercial director that I really respect, that I've worked with. I've cast a commercial for him, Network National, and he contacted me about my projects and what I was doing next because he felt very interested in moving in this direction, and he's willing to get his entire crew and everybody to work for nothing, for a favor, to do the role. So yes, they want to do it, but they're not going to want to do just anything.
Right.
They want something super special, and you have to have earned it. So it's a real feather in your hat to have him. I have this guy on a pitch deck now, and he's a commercial director, but I feel honored. And I wouldn't just give it away to anybody either. I mean, if you wrote that to direct it as well, and you have the vision, let that be yours. Don't just give away your vehicle. You have to respect the person and say, wow, this can add to what I'm doing, not take away from what I want to do.
And it's adding to their resume too. So you want people who are hungry, right? And just because they earn a lot right now or they've been in something high profile, that doesn't mean, now they don't want to have the lead or be the DP instead of the AC or et cetera, et cetera. So you want people who are gaining something from working for you too. Because if they're not gaining something, you better believe they're going to want more money, as they have every right to. So you want people who are as hungry as you are to fulfill the role that you're asking them to do, especially if you're offering them, pretty low budget.
I just want to double down on the prospect of, even if that person wants to do it, like you said, they might not even be able to do it on the budget that you have. And, at some point they'll send you their list and they're just incapable. They can create beautiful stuff, but they have to have it at a certain budget or whatever. So I think that's worth repeating.
Are you guys thirsty? Because I can send down some water there, if you don't mind. We want to keep our panelists hydrated in this weather, right? I want to ask you, what is, just as an aside, what's the most creative way that you have enticed appropriate creative way that you have enticed someone to work on your project?
Appropriate?
Did you say appropriate?
Why does it have to be appropriate?
Creative way to work on your project, just for some ideas about how to get people involved and on board.
I do a lot of cold emailing. I go to their webpage or their, watching a lot of shorts on YouTube and just say, hey, I got this project. And I try to leverage something that I have. And then it's a domino effect. You get one person and you say, hey, I've got such and such interested in this. Are you interested? So I think I use my filmmaker partner, his first feature film, to get the talent. And then I use that talent to get a lot more talent. And then, and it's all sort of tenuous. And you say, well, they're interested or whatever. And that might mean they just responded to your email or whatever. But I'm super comfortable just cold emailing people and dropping as many names as possible to make it work.
100%. Like, leverage everything you have. So whether you have had something that's been in festivals or something, you worked with some bigger names, I mean, whatever it is, or just even I'm friends with X and you used to date X, whatever it is, you're leveraging it because you never know what might get someone interested. You're just trying to get their attention. But I would say, in a way, especially if you're low budget, the real enticement is going to be the script. Like, is the script something they haven't tried before that they want to try? And if it's just the script is meh, and then it's just going to be so much harder to get them on board. And again, that just goes back to the pre-production, which is making sure the script is as amazing as possible and that you know that they're going to go for that type of story, that it's going to be bait for them.
I agree. Go with your strongest bio points in 1 or 2 sentences. Be very short. about what it is that you want. Be very direct and believe in what it is that you are pitching them. Because if you don't believe in it, and if it's really horrible and you get them to read it and then they know that it's horrible, they're never going to answer you again. So believe in what it is that you're saying when you say it. Otherwise, don't say it. And go with your strongest bio points. And you can be very honest. I research everyone before I reach them. So there was a girl that was making lots of money, a little girl that was making lots of money on television and commercials, but she had never done a film. And I said to the agent, I want to introduce her in film. It will say, introducing this child. And I only paid $125 a day. But I had to have this child, and I was super honest, and I got the person. So just be honest, be passionate, and be fast in getting to the point as to what you want, because nobody has time for all this other stuff.
And in terms of enticing actors, another strategy is offer them a genre that they're not well known for, right? So if they are always doing dramas, even if they're super high level, right? They're always doing Blind Spot or whatever, offer them a comedy. I mean, assuming you think they can actually do a good job, that is. But that's often people are looking to break into a different role or a bigger role. But especially with a different genre. So you're offering them something they don't normally get, and that might be an extra reason to read it. Just be like, in your email or your call or whatever, I see this in you. I believe that you could do this, and that's going to really be enticing to anyone to reach outside of their comfort zone.
I agree with. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I find that especially true for Black and Latino actors, because they get tired of playing the hood or the criminal or whatever. If you say, hey, play this lawyer or play this regular person, they go crazy because there's just not that much opportunity for that. But just to think about
I was going to say, a lot of the things that I do are Latino-centric or just diversity-centric and women-centric. So I use that to when I reach out to women, I'm like, I did a film last summer, my cinematographer, the director, I produced it, and all 3 cast members were women. And I'm so proud of that. So I feel like if I reach out to Latino actors and I say, this is a Latino director, Latina writer, it's mostly a Latino cast, we really need that. And so for me, that's something that I use because it's honest and truthful. If you went to Yale with someone, then you say, hey, I'm an alumni of Yale, and so are you. So you use everything that you can to your benefit, but specifically in the diversity and women realm, we need it. So I know lots of people are looking for it.
I agree with everything everybody just said, but I will say that a lot of this advice is for people who have a bit of a track record or are on a team that has a bit of a track record. So if you haven't made anything yet, or you don't have a team that has made enough to make up for maybe your deficiencies as the director or the producer or whatever it may be, don't get too hung up on getting that A-list or B-list talent or that hot shit director, or DP or whatever it may be. You can go for it, but don't get hung up on it, because you could spend the next 2-3 years making absolutely nothing because you're trying to go after these people who are up here. We have the tools that are available. If Sean Baker can make a movie on his iPhone, I know it's a cliche at this point, and it is, but it's true. It's still true. Go out and make stuff, because you never know what you're going to get at the end of the day, especially if you really put the passion and the work into it. You may get something that breaks through that you didn't expect to break through. Sometimes the thing that you make the fastest and the easiest ends up being great or better than the thing that you slaved over forever. And, it's like making a quick sketch that's brilliant, but a painting that took you years might be like, eh. So just don't get hung up on it, is all I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Timothy.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And someone who can bring you down to earth really fast, you might not have the budget for it, but if you do, as a casting director, because they will say, why do you expect to get this A-list actor or even this B-list actor if you don't have anything on your resume? and they'll say, come back to me when you do have something that played some festivals, that got a little bit of acclaim, and then we can go to the next level, right? So you wouldn't expect, I mean, just going to what Michael's saying, you wouldn't expect to be hired at a company and you've never done that kind of work as the CEO. You wouldn't, right? You would work your way up gradually, and the same with getting a certain level of cast and level of crew, right? You want to prove yourself at each level. Okay, I can do something with no budget with my friends. Okay, that was okay. That came out decently. Played a few festivals or showed online. Okay, I see where I need to improve. Now we move to the next level. And then we move, now maybe we have, for the third thing, we have money for a casting director, and now we pay them, and now we get sort of B-list talent, and that's really good. And then you see how it works.
Well, because it's not just a matter of like, there are some people that are like literally you try to go after and they're kind of snooty about it, and they're like, my client only wants to work with, A-list actors or A-list directors, and you go, whatever, but really most of the time it's that if you're going to involve yourself in someone's production, it's going to be hard, it's going to be time consuming. It means you're not doing something else that week or on the weeks that you're working with that person. And especially with actors, you're putting a lot of trust into someone that you're going to work intimately with. And you want to know to some degree that you're not going to end up with some creep or somebody who's just utterly lost with what they're doing, and that you're having to kind of make up for their deficiencies. So kind of just, even if it's small bites of things that you can make with your friends and family or whoever you have along the way to prove, yes, we can do this. Yes, we are trustworthy with whatever with whatever we've done. It just helps.
I love that idea, and I want to piggyback on that to say, just to point out that that's why I'm in love with web series, because the truth is, short film, feature film, you never really know what you have. You could do all the pre-production. I know this is about pre-production, but the truth is you never know what you truly have until that day everyone shows up on set for the first day and the cameras start rolling. But the thing about a web series is that you're not doing it necessarily all at once, and you can make adjustments and you can make improvements. And then, it's interesting, go out and watch like the first episode of Broad City when it was a web series, right? And then, you could see the development. You could see they started figuring out things, what's funny, figuring out their talents, their strengths or whatever. And the same goes for crew. You work with someone like, okay, this first episode we work with that person, I'll never work with them again. we need a new sound person. And you could bring it in. You could see, if you watch a lot of web series, you see a lot of time there's improvement over time if they give themselves, space between episodes, the filming of episodes. And it allows you to learn a lot in the process and build the team over the course of that web series.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Web series is a great kind of lower stakes way because you're not shooting a whole film. You're shooting maybe 2 episodes over a weekend or something like that. And there's a certain sort of lower expectation for, still not for the sound, but for maybe for the production design. If you learn one thing,
you guys are only going to leave with this idea.
Yeah,
sound.
That's fine. I would be more than happy with that.
I remember
for my students.
Also people saying, if they can't see you and they can't hear you, whether you're on stage or you're watching something on film, you tune out because those are the most important aspects of it, just on a very, very, very basic level. And I think the other thing that's happened, and tell me if you agree with this, though, is that, we watch so much content online, and you can go on to any of the cable channels, you go onto YouTube, you can just so often, just as a human being, we are seeing things that are that we have an expectation of how they should look. And so it's, in a way, like, how can we recreate that in the stories that we're telling, at least to just be at the bare minimum seeing, and they can see us and they can hear us. But just to remember that is, how you tell a story, that someone has to see you and someone has to hear you. I mean, that's just like super basic.
Yeah, I mean, also you have to come at it, especially since we're talking about pre-production, kind of, and especially if you're talking about short films, thinking what it is that you want this to be and where you want it to go and to accomplish. So the notion that you just want to make something that's great, but you also want to make something that maybe gets into good festivals, that gets seen by more people. Maybe you want it to be online. Maybe you want it to be a lot of different things, whether it's a short or a series or a feature. And it might sound strange to say that, but the reality is that you have to kind of think forward and not just make it to make it. Because you might make something that's great and then not know what to do with it, or you might make a story that's great that does look terrible, and maybe you should make it look a little better. Netflix won't put anything on anymore that's not shot 4K or higher. They won't even touch anything like that. Not to say that everybody out here should be gunning for Netflix, but it's something to keep in mind. And knowing the industry and knowing how things are seen and what's getting programmed and what's not getting programmed, et cetera, is smart. And I'll say this as well, because I also am I'm the New York consultant for SAG-Indy, so I do a lot of talking about preparing filmmakers and actors as filmmakers for making their first films. Be careful in the shorts world when it comes to working with union actors, because these days, if you're the shorts agreement for SAG-AFTRA is only for taking your short film to film festivals. If you want to put it online, you have to sign a new media agreement, okay? So be aware of it. And being aware of these kinds of things is just super important. Once again, knowing the world you're getting into, knowing the ramifications of what you're doing, and really learning the industry as an industry is just going to help you across the board.
Just a question, have you done new media versus the short SAG contract?
I've done both.
Are they dramatically different? Because I did the new media one, and it was doable. It was manageable.
Yeah. Well, they're still kind of taking a lot of the new media on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
I mean, the word new is still in there, even though it's still kind of not so new anymore.
Old
the internet.
media.
Yeah. to the union, it's still new, because it's a slow-moving entity that doesn't want to. It's like the government. It's designed to move slowly. It is. It's designed smartly.
So the question coming from the audience is, so everyone can hear, is there time to explain that a little bit? Could you just,
The short film agreement, SAG-AFTRA's short film agreement, is designed for films that go to festivals. Now, if you want to put that film later on online, you're going to have to go back to your cast and sign a new agreement. You're going to have to ask the union, get your cast members to sign a new media agreement, which may mean that you might have to pay your cast if you haven't paid them, if you've deferred their pay or whatever, because you can actually defer pay in the short film agreement. But right now, the new media agreement. The new media agreement. Well, some actors are willing to do it, and some actors are willing to if they love you and you don't have the money and they just want to work together. It happens all the time, So anyway, that's the point. But the new media agreement is a little more pliable right now because it's new and it's on a kind of a case-by-case basis.
thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Just
Go ahead.
piggybacking on what he said, I, in advance as a producer now, I actually not only get all my cast to sign all of these things, but I also get my crew to sign in advance that they are making this as a work for hire for me, because when you get into licensing to networks, they expect all of these things to be done. So copyright, all these things that you didn't think about while you were making your film, now I actually do it in advance because I went through it once. Now I just do it all the time, just to cover my bases all the time in case I ever do license to a network again.
And that's why, if we're getting into crew, having a great either UPM or production manager and or line producer, or produce, maybe even just a producer who knows all this stuff like you, it really, really helps on so many levels to have a partner who is as invested as you are in it, and especially from my point of view as the director and writer, to have someone who's more on the business side, you could call it, right? So they are at least as invested in the paperwork and the technical stuff and the hiring, and and you're doubling your contacts already with that other person who's on board as your partner.
Yeah, don't leave all of your paperwork to your PA.
Oh, please, no.
Like, don't.
Do not.
Just don't do it, because you will find out that you're in bad shape later on, potentially. And believe me, this happens on major film sets. It happens on mid-sized film sets. That the recent film school grad who's the nephew of somebody is told to get everybody to sign off on their time cards, and months later, somebody's like, we're not getting our bond back, and that's because the nephew didn't get somebody's signature. So it happens a lot. And when you're gearing up, definitely think about it, especially if you're a small crew, you're a small organization. There just really are a few things that you have to have going in. If you're a director and a producer, that's fine, but when you're on set, you're going to be a director, and that should be where your head's at. You shouldn't be the one who's also thinking about where food's coming from, what's happening tomorrow with our set that didn't call us, etc. You need a producer who's going to be worrying about those things, and then that producer probably needs somebody who can go get the food so that they don't have to leave set. You need an AD who's actually going to watch the clock and think about the next setup and communicate things that you as a director shouldn't even be thinking about once again, because you're supposed to be thinking about emotion and actors and camera moves and such. So just be aware that that's part of the process, that to understaff your film is almost as bad as overstaffing your film, if there is such a thing.
All facts.
Yeah, and just want to highlight, feed your cast really well.
Really
Please don't feed them pizza and pretzels or whatever. I mean, that's not acceptable. Especially if you're not going to pay them very well, or it's $125 a day or whatever. Please, that's where if you don't have the budget for that, you don't have the budget to make a film.
You'll have a riot on your hands by day 5 if you're only feeding them pizza.
If that, yeah.
Also, try to get cinematic locations that start off that way so that you can save an art direction.
Yeah.
That's really important. Sometimes I see a film, I'm like, why are they shooting at a blank wall? It's so bad. They could have just done something else. And really, I like to just choose my location as the best location that I can, so that I could end up saving money on art direction and what needs to be done, and the wall that needs to be painted, and the curtain that needs to be hung. I just like to shoot in places, if I can, that are ready-made, perfect for exactly what I had in mind.
And there's no better lighting than the sun. So.
Oh, yes. And New York City is amazing.
And if you don't have that budget to get that location, then don't pretend that you have that location, right? So we have all seen things that were in someone's kitchen, and they're like, this is a spaceship. And it's like, who are you fooling, right? So I always tell my clients, we're not trying to maximize or push the budget to its limits till it's bursting. What we're trying to do is make something look as good as possible for the budget that you have. So if you don't have the budget to set it on a spaceship, set it in that kitchen. You're going to have to rewrite it, hopefully. This sounds like a terrible film, but write it for the space that you do have and the budget that you do have, so we can make it look and sound as good as possible within your resources.
I was up for a major program recently, AFI Directors Women's Workshop, where they only take in 8 women per year for this amazing opportunity. And I have this project that I'm working on. It's actually an episodic based on my one-woman show, Brownsville Bread. And they love the script, and one of the caveats to working with them was that you had to shoot it in LA. And my piece is based in Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. I mean, give me Harlem, give me Washington Heights, give me downtown, but California? So they sent me a film that was done in LA for New York. Very different film, shot in Queens, very good film. But I didn't feel like it was going to serve my story. So one of the questions that they asked me in the final round, and I think this is why I didn't get in, is that, how are you going to substitute LA, make it New York? And I said, I think it's more important that it be in a place where my character doesn't belong. I'd rather shoot Compton for Compton than try to make LA into New York in this gritty story. So, again, the backdrop of otherwise change the story, but I'm willing to change my story of Brownsville to Compton because that grittiness is more important than looking like New York for me. It's where the character is immersed that was more important. And so that, for me, I don't know where that came from, but location.
I was going to say my digital series, Brooklynification, emerged out of the fact that as a producer-writer, I had a cousin who had a brownstone. And I'm like, there's got to be stories to tell around that. And I started that series with locations in mind and wrote stories that fit those locations. Lost those locations and had to change the story around. But it makes your life so much easier when you have access to those beautiful places or those places in mind when you're writing, because if for the budgets we're talking about, you can't sort of back into those things after the fact.
Or people that are phenomenal actors that you know what they're really great at. It's like you can write for them. So I wrote a web series that's on Amazon Prime called Reasons Why I'm Single. Reasons, the letter Y. I'm single. And I wrote it for me. I was studying acting right across the street at Carnegie Hall with Wynn Handman. I was studying with two fantastic actresses, Gina Tuttle and Holly Barker. And I thought, I want to make a series with these two very talented women. And we called it Reasons Why I'm Single. And it was great. And we loved it.
And
so
just to
know
go,
your talent and write for them.
To agree with what everyone's saying, I mean, again, if you look at Broad City, if you look at the original, few episodes, they are clearly like shot on someone's phone or something like that. But you can tell they have a voice. So again, it was for the actors. Like they had a story to tell, and they clearly have the most, a super powerful, hilarious, unique voice. And so it was more about that. And they just shot it on like people's apartments and on the streets. And it's still, because of the voice and good sound, you still buy into it, right? So that's what's key there.
Well, I just love all of these incredibly interesting, juicy tips that you've been giving us on getting started. And we have some questions. Thank you, everyone, for handing in your questions. So let's get started on those. This is for Christopher. Because you're a lawyer, I guess this one is coming to you. At what point should someone consider starting an LLC?
When you're starting to deal with money, other people's money, your money, that's a good question. In New York City, it's a little difficult to form a LLC in New York City because there's a publication requirement, so it could get kind of expensive. But a lot of people are choosing, I think Nevada's popular, you could do that online, and Delaware's, you could do it online. I think you could probably do it for a couple of $100. I haven't done it in a while, so. But I think, for me, it's always about when you're starting to deal with money for yourself or for other people, especially if you're getting investment or someone's lending money to the production, is when you want to really start thinking about LLC. Anytime you start thinking about having people sign contracts at those stages, I think it's important.
So if you have an address, say in Nevada, can I just ask you?
No, I don't. No, you don't need to be resident. You don't need to reside there. You can go online. It's just those places have made it easy to create a corporation or LLC in those states.
And just realize that, that if you do that, you're keeping an LLC open that you're paying taxes on for a long time. at a certain point, you go, why am I still paying taxes on this film that I made 10, 15 years ago? And sometimes you close it down. But I would say that, if you're making a feature that actually has money coming in, investors or whatever it may be, certainly you're going to need some corporation to protect yourself and to kind of structure the whole thing around. But like, I wouldn't run out and put together an LLC just for a short or something like that. It seems like a waste of time and money.
But as an actor, you should make yourself into an S corporation so that you can deduct certain things that you invest in yourself. So I've been an S corporation since the 90s, and that's my corporation.
Even more so under the new Trump tax laws as well.
Okay. So this is from Vance. When developing your budget, do you hire a line producer ahead of time?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a yes, because I want to be honest with myself about how much something's actually going to cost. And if we're just going to magic, I mean, you have a certain type of director or producer who's just like, oh, we'll just do it for half that. But you can't just do that. You have to know what the costs are going to be and say exactly, as Michael was saying, exactly where you're cutting the costs. So you're like, okay, we're shooting only 2 days, not 3 days, or whatever it is. You have to know that. You can't just make it up, or you're going to run out of money halfway through the first day. And now what was the point? So you didn't prepare properly. So for me, hiring a line producer, or sometimes it's learning those budgeting skills yourself, but you have to be honest with the budget is key.
Yeah, I would say that certainly if you have the money to hire a line producer, hire a line producer. If you don't, you're going to have to learn how to do it yourself or partner up with somebody who knows how to do it. Again, it's not just about writing a budget. It's about learning how to break down a script, which is a science. You can read about it. There's books that talk about it. There is a process of how to break down a script so that you understand, how long each scene is going to take, what the concepts are in terms of time, in terms of location, in terms of number of actors per scene, so that you can start scheduling and then write your budget. Because that really, you can't just write a budget. You have to know what the script breaks down to. You have to understand what the schedule really is going to look like. How many days are you in this place? How many days are you in that place? How many days are you over here? How many people do you really need? And then go from there. So, I mean, I tried to avoid for years writing my own budgets, but then after a while, I was like, if I'm not going to do it, I'm going to have to hire somebody, and I'd rather just learn how to do it. And frankly, once again, doing those things that you kind of don't want to do forces you to understand your project better. When you write your own budget and you break down your own script and write your own schedule, and even if it's not the final thing, you understand the project you are making better than anyone does. And I know it's not in every creative person's wheelhouse necessarily, but I would say that a lot of creative people are in denial about the possibility that it might be in their wheelhouse, because it does suck. It's a hard job sitting there in front of a computer and putting a spreadsheet together and doing all this stuff, but that's a large part of making films is the paperwork and all of that work that is not fun. But knowing your film inside out just makes you a better filmmaker.
Thank you so much. And just following up on this quickly, this is from Matt. Where did you start getting budgets 10 years ago? Where do you find them now? So maybe this idea of where, you were talking, Michael, about resources that are there. And any of you have any resources that you might want to mention? Budgets.
There are lots of grant opportunities. You're talking about getting financing?
Actually, no, about
templates?
getting the budgets and the templates.
Oh.
There's downloadable stuff. I don't necessarily always trust them. I mean, there's also, there's software that can be great to use, but I guess I'm old school. I just go straight to Excel and create my own budgets. I often ask friends who are filmmakers who've made bigger films. That's a lot of what I used to do. Is ask people that I just knew if they could show me what they would mind sending me their budget so I could take a look at it and kind of model mine after a certain, level. One of the things that we often do is we come up with 3 budgets usually on features and on, not as much as on shorts, but on features. We'll come up with the pie in the sky and then the mid-range and then that sort of, unfortunately, realistic range. So,
That's great.
Yeah.
I would also advise asking around a lot and just, see what you like, see a project that's a comp to yours, and then inquire, like, what did you spend? I saw High Maintenance, and I loved it, and I wanted to do something similar to that with my web series, and I just spent a lot of time until from someone I got what their per episode budget was, and it was something I thought was achievable, and that was a big inspiration to see that they could do episodes between like $3,000 and $5,000 an episode.
Yeah, my indie budgets usually come out to between $1,000 and $2,000 per minute as you see it on screen. So that's usually what my budget is, but that's not how I budget it. I really break down the script and to understand where I'm going to be, how long I need to be there, how many days I'm going to be shooting in this location, and it's really breaking down your script. I really agree with Michael in that, and especially if you know your script back and forth, any questions coming at you, firing at you while you're directing, you'll be able to answer with ease. And it'll be surprising everyone around you.
Or at least look like you're answering.
Yeah. You'll even surprise yourself.
This is from Stephanie. How did starting your first project change your overall process? What was your biggest takeaway?
My first project that I wrote was Brownsville Bred the play. My takeaway is that I have the power to create the content that I want to see. And it was the greatest takeaway that I could ever have. And I think for anyone is, wow, it's so empowering to know that you can present something as a finished product to other people and it can impact them.
It's great.
For me, I would say that improv on the set, if you've budgeted the time for it and the money for the crew, can really, even if you've done tons of rehearsals, improv, if you leave room for improv, that can yield amazing things, whether, just some prop changed on that day and you're like, oh, I didn't know we had that, or this space, we're playing, now that we're in the space, it's a little bit different. And especially if you work with great improvisers, as I always try to do, there can be new things that come up and you have to be ready for them. At the same time, I always make sure we're shooting the script first, right? So we have it there, so that the editor, I know that the editor has enough to work with. And then once we've done those takes, we have room for improv. And that has sometimes yielded some of the best shots and best lines, is something that you had no idea before that moment that it would come up that way.
I would say for me, it was go in having a plan and expect that plan to completely change as you're going along and be okay with that. But also having the sense to know when going out of the plan is going too far out of the plan, which is hard to know in the time, but you know it. If you really know your script and know what you're trying to do and you're really protecting the emotions of each scene that you're doing and the overall project. That constant self-delusion is probably a really good tool for filmmakers.
I was going to add, I think you just got to be prepared to make a lot of mistakes. There's a reason why people say, oh, that's a good first film, right? Because it's just held to a different standard because you're learning so much in the process. And your goal is to not make the same mistakes and sort of be able to identify what went wrong or whatever. I have this theory of why Steven Spielberg is so great at this point is because he's done it so long. He just has the perfect crew and he knows who to work with and he knows who he likes to work with and he can reach into that. And when you start the process, you don't have that. You don't have anything near that and you're learning and you're going to find the people you work well with and it's a process in itself.
I think also you learn so much after your first edit. In my case, I wanted to save the money and I knew how to edit, so I started editing and I'm a pretty good editor. I still like to hire an editor, but I always go for the first edit first because you just learn so much how continuity and the way that the camera should have been as opposed to this eye line and that. I think you learn so much in the edit. I mean, it's one thing being there, but when you're watching the film as an edit and you have to spend so much time. I mean, you spend 4 or 5 months editing a 7-minute film. That's a lot of time and 10, 12-hour days. You're so immersed in it and you really learn so much. I think I learned so much from editing.
But also, as you're saying, bringing in another editor, whether they're editing it first or if you took a first pass at it, can really make a huge difference. I know this is post-production, but that can really open up your eyes to, oh man, if you're showing it in front of people who are critical, and that would include your editor and your peers, you'll realize how much you didn't need, and they can shave away. Because what we don't want is something that just is milking the time for all you can milk and being like, well, I'm making a 40-minute short. It's like most shorts, I would much rather, we want to do the shortest time possible to still get your story across sufficiently. And any more than that, people are going to start tuning out and it's going to start feeling bloated. So an editor, a good editor can really help with that, just being a dispassionate observer.
So we have a lot of questions and we don't have very much time left. So I'm just going to ask a couple of more questions, and please feel free if someone just wants to take it, and then we'll try to get through as many as we can. Renee is asking, what has been the biggest change technologically in preparation for your films?
I was going to say, I love video auditions. I mean, you can really identify good talent through a video audition, whereas, I've done the cattle call, and that sucks, and that's miserable. But a lot of times a video audition can tell you a lot about whether they can pull it off.
Okay, great. What is the most challenging task or tasks you've had to accomplish in pre-production, and what would you do differently?
Raising money.
Casting. Because it can just, both processes can take so long. So if you're like, we have to shoot, we have this location next week, I mean, I sure hope you have the other stuff in place, because really getting that great cast or raising those funds can take much longer than you expect.
I also want to put in a pitch real quick for independent film producing series financing. So you can find that with the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. It's called Independent Film Producing Series Financing, so that you can watch that as well. And a panel is from SAG-AFTRA is talking about film financing. And actually, Melissa will send you the link. Okay, great. All right, let's see. Quickly, Kevin's asking, what is the best way to turn an ongoing non-union project union?
Have them call SAG Indy.
Okay.
We're very good at talking people into doing it.
Very accommodating, I found.
Get one union actor involved. Once you have that, the paperwork goes through.
And remember that there's no such thing as a waiver. People will tell, actors will tell filmmakers will tell actors that they can waive. There's no such thing as a waiver in the union.
Okay. Do the same rules apply for a full-length feature? I guess the rules meaning, it's not so specific, but I guess pre-production, what we're talking about.
Pretty much. It's just longer and harder.
Yes, much longer, much harder. People talk to me about creating their first feature and they haven't done anything else. I say, start little. I mean, take a small bite. Why would you? I get offers a lot now to produce other people's films, and I turn them down all the time. Great stuff coming out of fantastic labs with budgets, because I don't want to spend a year of my time devoted to your project. That's a big project. Make sure that you're able to accomplish it.
Yeah, it's all about trust again. Why would we trust you? Why would your crew and your financiers trust someone who has never made a short or web series or several shorts or several web series with the budget and time and everything for a feature film?
Exactly. And you're putting yourself out there and you're learning. I love what you said earlier, Michael, just do it. And I think I've heard that really from everyone here. There's going to be a process of learning. The same way, the very first thing we ever acted in, would you want that to be, the pinnacle of your career? Well, maybe it was. Maybe you were 2 years old and did a great job as a baby. But whatever. I mean, we keep growing, and so we're going to keep growing also as, in creating films for ourselves as well. Anne Marie is wondering, have you been able to create globally, and what advice do you have for someone interested in making films beyond the U.S.?
Find
Yes.
people who have. I have not done that.
So I produced a series called Grandpa Knows Best that is on HBO Latino, and they just bought another short film that I produced this year.
I actually am wrong. I've shot a documentary partially overseas in Rome, and getting to understand cultures locally and how that affects your production, especially in a town that takes 3 hours off in the middle of the day, is really fascinating. So yeah, getting to know the culture you're about to go into, not just creatively, but in terms of structurally, super important.
And again, I think it's all about your network. Have you hired that local producer? And how are you going to hire that local producer? It's going to be through your network contacts and pushing and asking.
But it's all the same work. It's the same licensing work. It's the same production work. It's just, I don't know if they're doing it at a different place. I don't know if the question was to doing it in a different place or just having it be global.
I'm not sure either.
Okay.
I was just giving you the overview of the question. Thank you all, though, for answering that. We wanted to ask about permits in New York City. Does anyone want to cover that really quickly? About when you need a permit and when you don't for shooting in New York?
I mean, if you're shooting in your apartment, again, you probably don't need that insurance and you probably don't need that permit. If you're shooting on the sidewalk, how much can you, or the subway, it's like, how much can you get away with? You might be able to get away with something, but if if you have a big crew and you're shooting for a day on a subway, well, you better believe that you're going to need all those permits and licensing and insurance.
My understanding of it is that if you're impeding traffic in any way, it's on the sidewalk by putting down a tripod. You need a permit, which is free. You just have to go do it. But if you're just carrying a camera, following somebody around or whatever, not really getting in the way of anyone who's doing their daily business, you don't necessarily need one. And in terms, since you brought up insurance, get insurance. Shooting in your own apartment, that's one thing, but if you go into somebody's grandmother's apartment and you break something, you were going to owe that grandma. And it's good to have the insurance, and God forbid somebody gets hurt on your set, it's a big problem. And there is production insurance available for small films. Not in many places, but they have it.
There's a really good place. You don't have to be a Miami resident, but there's a group like the SAG Foundation called Miami Filmgate Miami, and they offer all production insurance for $400 if you're a member. And to join, it's like, I don't know, $100 or something like that. So it's really worth it.
There's something called Fractured Atlas as well that does it here. Or else I also go to DeWitt Stern, but they seem to be more expensive than Fractured.
Chris, did you have something?
No, I think I end up paying for like short in the $500 to $1,000 range. I think you could get away with it. Yeah.
All right, so I still have a lot of questions. Please come up afterwards, and if our guests are able to stay and answer your questions specifically, they will. But I'd like to ask how we can reach you, how we can watch your work and follow you, and if you'd like to say what you're working on right now that we just can't wait to watch and support. You want to start, Chris?
Oh, so I'm starting the second season of Brooklynification. It's a web series we made with Brick TV in Brooklyn. We're on our second season, which will announce a premiere date pretty soon.
Great.
Also, sorry, I'm executive producing a feature film, 72 Hours, a Brooklyn love story, which will be on video on demand services this year as well. So please look out for those.
Fantastic. Elaine?
So I'm on Instagram at Elaine Del Valle Productions. Please follow me. And Elaine Del Valle Productions, my name.
Yeah. And everyone can get the name also when you watch the video. You can get everybody's name. And also on the introduction that you got for your invitation, you'll be able to see the correct spellings for everyone's name, just so you know.
And my website is delvalleproductions.com. And as an actress, I am going to Miami next week to shoot a short film by a 7-time Emmy Award-winning director that I'm really excited about. I just finished another short film as an actress, my first scary movie. And I'm going to be working with Dominic Colon on a series that he's doing called Poppy that I am so excited about. It is one of the best things that I've ever read. And this summer, I will be shooting an episode of my first installment of Brownsville Bred, the series that I'm calling She Said. And I'm really excited about this project. And watch Victor and Isolina on HBO coming soon.
Fantastic. Michael?
In terms of reaching me, my company and website is Plug Ugly Films. And you can also reach me through SAG-Indy if you have any questions in that world. SAGindy.org. And just premiered a short at the Woodstock Film Festival called All Against the Sea, which we will hopefully be showing more of. And I'm gearing up, just brought on a new casting director to gear up to make a film called The Phantom Limbs of the Rollo Sisters, hopefully this summer in Nebraska. That's a feature. And then deep in development on another project called Jew Boy, which is based on a book that we will hopefully be shooting in the next couple of years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Timothy?
You can see me at many a bar basement doing improv to this day to 5 people at a time. It's still great. You can see Lemon on Amazon Prime and United Airlines. I'm currently transforming that into the feature that I'll hopefully be directing later this year. That's the plan. And you can find my script consulting and my screenwriting workshops on blueprintscreenwritinggroup.com. That's blueprintscreenwritinggroup.com. And I have a bunch of features that are currently in casting that I can't talk about yet, but hopefully I will talk about them at the next panel.
Awesome. Thank you all so very much for everything you've given us tonight.
Thank you.
Wishing everyone a very happy new year and going into 2018. And we hope to see you again at one of the panels here at SAG-AFTRA. Thank you to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation as well.